Hi, my name is Tyler Owen, and today we are going to be doing a tutorial on how to make a simple subtitle system for the dialogue or other audio in your game. I am the creator of Lacuna Passage with my company Random Seed Games, and we've created this simple subtitle system to use in Lacuna Passage, and we wanted to share it with everyone else. And the primary method that we're going to be using today to do this is loading in text from an external text file. And in the case of Unity today, we're going to be using the resources folder. So what that means is we have a dialog file that is just a .txt, and we create our own syntax for data, in this case subtitle text, and timing, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but this is kind of what we'll get into later. So this is our text file, and from that we're going to pull that into the game through the resources folder, which are all packaged into an asset when you build your game. So to get an idea of what that looks like, we'll see the finished project here that we'll be working on today. And
Jessica,
you'll see that we can trigger a dialogue event, the audio plays, the subtitles play, and we can even trigger things to happen in the scene.
Yeah, I'm here.
To time with our subtitles and our audio.
I can't get a lot.
So, in order to do that, we're going to start off with a fresh project. So I'm going to go to File, New Project, and we don't need to bring anything in with us. Okay, now we want to create a new folder for our scripts. So we'll do a scripts folder, and in that folder we're going to do our main script that we're going to be using, which is C#, so it'll be called Dialogue Manager. And then we are going to create a new game object in our scene. And we're going to name that also Dialogue Manager. And we're going to attach that script to it. So let's go ahead and open this up here. And now these are the finished scripts, but I'm going to close those for now. And we will open up this one. Okay, so we've got our dialogue manager with the basic setup that Unity auto fills for us. And we are going to start out by setting it up as a singleton. Now, if you're not familiar with singletons, they're just one way of working with a unique game object that needs to stay a singular entity in your scene and can't have duplicates or anything else. So we're going to use the awake function for that. So we're going to use void awake. And then we want, essentially we want our dialogue manager script to be, to only allow it to have one instance in our scene at any one time. So in order to do that, we need to have an instance variable. So we're going to do public static dialogue manager, and we're going to call it instance. And then we want it to be a little more secure, so we're going to have it be able to, you're going to be able to get the instance, but you're only going to be able to set it privately. And so that is our singleton property. And then, so in our awake function here, we want to check and make sure that this is the only instance in our scene and make sure that it's not null. So we're going to do if instance is not equal to null, and also instance is not equal to this. So it's checking if the instance is something else in the scene, then we need to change that. We need to destroy itself. So if a game object exists in a scene that's already the instance of our dialog manager, then we're going to destroy this one because this one is the second one and we don't want it. And then we're going to set instance equal to this. So if we get through this and we don't destroy ourselves, then we're going to set ourselves as the instance. All right. And now we want to have it also create an audio source for us that our audio is going to play. So still inside the awake function, we're going to have the game object dot add component of an audio source. And you could do this manually by adding an audio source to your object, but it's just a little cleaner to have it add it automatically through code. And now we also need to have a function that's going to play our audio. So we're going to create a public function for begin dialogue. And that's going to pass in, it's going to require an audio clip. And we're going to call that our passed clip, because it's being passed in from whatever is calling the function. Okay. And then we're going to have, we're going to need the audio clip that we're going to use for this. So let's go back to Unity here, and we're going to create a folder called audio, and then I'm just going to copy and paste in, or I'm just going to drag and drop in an audio file that I already have prepared. So we've got our dialog1 audio file, and we want to make sure that's not a 3D sound, because dialogue in our case is coming from, we want it to be heard equally loud wherever you are in the game. So we'll make sure it's not a 3D sound and hit apply. And then we'll have that ready for us here. And let's see, then we need to create a test dialog object that's going to call our begin dialog function. So let's go ahead and create a game object, an empty game object, and we're going to call this test dialog. And then we're going to create another script in our scripts folder called test dialog, and we're going to attach it to that game object. And let's go ahead and open that one up as well. Okay, so now we have our test dialog script, and what we're going to do with that is just I'm actually going to copy and paste in some information from another script I already have made. So what we've got is a public audio clip called dialog clip, and then in the update function we are waiting for an input of a key down, and we're waiting for the space bar to be pressed. And then when that happens, we're going to call our dialog manager instance, which is the instance that we set up in our singleton here, and we're going to call begin dialog, and we're going to pass through this dialog clip that is a public attribute of our test dialog script. So if we save these and go back to Unity, oops, what did I do wrong here? Oh, tree instance. Why does it say tree instance? There we go. All right, that's gone. And now let's see if we hit play here. Oh, we've got to first put the dialog file in our dialog clip property of our test dialog script. And if we hit play here, and then if I hit the spacebar, oh, you know what? I didn't actually call it to play the audio file. So in our dialog manager script, we're going to say, we're going to do set and play the audio clip. And then we need audio.clip. Audio is just a shortcut for the audio source that we created here. So that's a built-in thing we can call there. So audio.clip is going to equal dialog, is going to equal past clip. And then audio.play to start the clip. So let's save that and go back to Unity. And then when we hit play here,
Jessica.
we can hear we've got the auto clip playing when we hit spacebar. So that's working. Okay. So now we've got that working, and we need to now start passing in the subtitles from our text file. So we need to now go back to Unity and create a resources folder, and that's what I mentioned before, to load in assets at runtime. So it must be called resources. And then we're just going to create another subfolder. Since you can have a lot of resources in your project, sometimes we're going to have a subfolder for dialogues. And I'm going to copy in that text file that I showed you at the beginning of the video, and that's going to get copied into there. And so now we've got that dialog file with all the timings and stuff in there. And I'll tell you a little bit about that here. Okay, yeah, let's go over what some of these things mean. So in our case, what we're doing is we're going to be parsing the text from this file, and so we can kind of use whatever we want in this string, in this series of lines, to separate information into different categories for us. In our case, what we're trying to do is create timings that will time our subtitles to our audio. So we're going to need to make sure that we look in another application to get the timings that we want. So I've already gone ahead and done this, and I make sure in the type of file parsing that we're going to do, it's not going to be smart enough to auto-organize these based on the timing. So it's organizing them based on first string, second string, third string, and so forth by line. So it's going to go in order. And so you have to make sure that your timings are also in order to make sure they're sequential. So this first tag that we have here, where we have the bracketed time, it looks, we're using a similar format to like HTML formatting, but you can do whatever you want. So we're just using time to designate the tag for this information. So these 6 digits with a period is our time signature that we're going to have trigger this little piece of subtitle text. And then that is separated by a pipe, and the pipe is just to separate the time from the content. So the content is the subtitle after the pipe. And then we can actually use, since we're going to be using the GUI system in Unity, we can actually use built-in tags like bold. So here's a bold tag surrounding the name of whoever is speaking in our dialogue. So Connor's name will be bolded because of these tags in our subtitle text. So this is all subtitle text, but those tags are going to tell us that it'll be bold. And then the rest of it for the end of the line is a single subtitle string. Now after that, we have this other one that comes in at 5 seconds, and it has a different tag on the other side of the pipe. It says trigger. So trigger is another tag that I've created that our code is going to be parsing for. And it has 2 things after the trigger. There's 2 words or series of words. So in our case, cube is going to refer to a game object, and grow is going to refer to a function on a script attached to that game object that we're going to be calling via a send message function. So if some of you are familiar with send message already, that's how that's going to work. Otherwise, I will show you here soon. And then we've got one other tag here, and that's break. Now, break is going to be used in case you need to turn off subtitles for a short period of time or forever, however long you want, really, while your audio file for your dialogue is playing. So if you have characters that are speaking and then they take an extended pause, you might not want to have the previous line of dialogue displayed for that entire pause period. So you can put in a break tag, or that's what we're using anyways, to designate that we don't want any subtitle text to appear during that break. So the break will start at 24, 25 seconds, whatever, and it'll continue until the next time that we have a valid subtitle string. So those are the main tags that we're using here. And we need to figure out how to parse for those. So let's go back to our dialog manager script. And what we're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste in a whole bunch of variables here, but I will explain what they're used for in our case as we go along. And then you can, this is just for the purposes of our subtitle programming, but if you want to do something similar, you can pause the video and copy these yourself. So let me copy those in here. I just want to make sure I've got everything. Okay, so. All right, that's a lot of stuff, but I'll go through it here with you as we go. And you can see we've got some highlighted errors there, and that's just because we need to also add in a using system collections generic here at the top, and that'll make those these lists work for us. So most of the variables that I just copy and pasted in here are list variables. List variables are a more dynamic way of using an array, essentially. So we can dynamically update a list during runtime. We can add values to it, subtract values to it, rearrange them, whatever we want to do. We don't have to worry about that being a problem. So most of them are private, and that's because these are ones that are going to be, we're going to be doing a lot of additional parsing with these that the information that it'll display won't be very relevant to us in the inspector. So we don't even need to see that information in Unity. But then the ones that are public here are going to be the important ones that we can review to make sure that our text file is being parsed correctly. And then I've also got a few ints here for next subtitle and next trigger. So you can kind of guess by what we're doing here that we're creating lists of subtitles and lists of triggers. The other tag that we were using, the break tag, will be incorporated as a subtitle. And you'll see how that works here in a little bit. So these are all the things that I just copied and pasted in. So if you're trying to follow along exactly with what I'm doing, you can pause here and recreate those variables exactly as I have them listed. All right, so now in order for us to utilize these lists and pull in this information, we're going to be doing a lot of that here in our begin dialog. So we only want to pull in that information when we need it. So we're going to do that at the beginning of our begin dialog thing. And the way that's going to work is we're going to have, well, first we're going to need a new variable in here called dialog audio. Which is just an audio clip. And we're going to call that our past clip, because we're going to use that in multiple places and throughout the rest of the script, not just in this one function. So now we're going to use this dialog audio instead of past clip here, where we say audio clip equals. And then I will make sure that we create that variable up here as well. So we want a private audio clip called dialog audio. All right, so now that looks good. And then we are going to start pulling in all of this, or we're going to start to make sure our lists are reset every time that we do a begin dialog. So when we begin a new dialog, we don't want to have any leftover subtitles from a previous dialog. So we're going to reset all of them, and I'm just going to copy and paste this in as well to save some time here. So we're resetting, I believe, all of our lists and strings and floats and stuff for information related to our subtitles and our triggers. And then we're also setting the next subtitle and next trigger file ints to 0 because every time we do a new begin dialog, we're resetting it back to 0. We're starting at that first string of subtitle for the new dialog file. And then let's see here. Then we want to get everything from the text file. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use something called ResourcesLoad, and some of you may be familiar with that already, but we want to get everything from the text file. So to do that, we need a text asset first, and we'll just call that temp, because we'll only use it for a couple lines here. And we're going to do resources.load, and we are going to load from the folder that we created. So that's going to be dialog / dialog audio.name. And then we want to do that as a text asset. Okay, so this corresponds to the resources folder. So resources.load has by default the resources folder. And then we need the subfolder of dialog. Plus, we're going to have, since our text file is named the exact same name as our dialog audio file, the audio clip, we're going to do dynamically load in the correct file based on the audio clip that is passed when we call begin dialog. And then make sure that's as a text asset so it knows how to understand the file when it loads it. Okay, so we've got that as temp, and now we're going to have we've got this file lines private string array. So this array is now going to be file lines equals temp.text.split, and then we are going to split our text every time there is a return. Okay, so every time that there is a return here, so we return to another line, it's going to split that line off into its own string in an array. So now we need to split those lines, since we've got each of these in their own line now, hopefully, if we've done this right so far. So now we need to split everything before the pipe and after the pipe, because we don't want to display the time in the subtitle text, obviously. So we want to split up those lines now. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to split subtitle and trigger related lines into different lists. Since subtitles and triggers are going to be being able to be called essentially simultaneously, so you could have a trigger that's called while a subtitle is being displayed, we need to have those in two different lists. So what we'll do is a for each string called line in file lines. If line dot contains trigger, so if a line in our file lines string array has this text in it, which is one of our tags, then we want to add that to a new list called trigger lines. So we're going to trigger lines.add line. And if it doesn't have that trigger, so else, we're going to put subtitle lines dot add line. So we've got two different lists now, trigger lines and subtitle lines. So now if our text is being parsed correctly, we will have a whole bunch of lines in our string list, and in our case for this one, just one in our trigger list. So the trigger here for cube grow will not be in our subtitle lines list, but it will be the only one in our trigger lines list because it contains this tag. Okay, so now we've got different lists for those different lines in our file. Next, we need to split out our subtitle elements. So we are going to split out our subtitle elements. So for each line in the subtitle list and we'll just do an incrementing count here. So it'll increment through each number or each entry in this list. Subtitle lines dot count, and then we're going to increment the count. Okay, so now for each of our subtitle lines in the list, we're going to have a string array called split temp, and that will equal subtitle lines dot count, or whoops, subtitle lines bracket count split, and we're going to split this one at the pipe. Okay, so that means in our text file here, since we're doing the subtitle ones, this would be a subtitle line that we currently have in our subtitle lines list, and now we're splitting it so that the first piece will be before the pipe and the second piece will be after the pipe. So now we've got our string array that's split temp for each of these counts. So now we're going to have another list, subtitle timing strings, because we're splitting out those from a string. And we're going to add split temp 0. So that would be, so each of these lines is going to have two entries. So this is 0 and this is 1, since the count starts at 0 for splitting a string into, or for arrays. All arrays start at 0. So this line is split into two strings. It's the first one, which is 0, is the time. The second one, which is 1, is the subtitle. So now we've got the subtitle timing, which is 0, added to a new list called subtitle timing strings. And now we need to convert that string, that timing string, into a float list. So we've got subtitle timings, which is a float list, and we are going to add a float dot parse And we are going to create a new function for this called clean time string. And we're going to be using subtitle timing strings cnt count to do this. All right, so what does that mean? So we're going to do a new function, and that is going to be just below, or wait, sorry, just after our begin dialog function. So we're going to do private, or well, let me tell you what this is doing. So this function is going to remove all characters that of the string that are not part of the timing float. So in this string, we've got these characters. Obviously, time is not part of the float. So we want to remove all those characters. So we're going to clean the time string. So private string clean time string, and it's going to be passed in a string called time string. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this little bit in here for us too, because it's a little beyond the scope of this tutorial. We're going to be using something called regex, which I'll need to put in another using here for system text regular expressions, because we're using regex regular expressions, regex, I don't know how to say it. But this is to filter out some characters from our text string, from our time string. So we're going to return only the digits. So we're only going to get the digits, and then we're going to replace that string with it's going to return the string with just the digits and the period that forms our float. So we're going to get just this bit right here. Okay, so that's being called here, and it's going to parse it and add it to our subtitle timing string. And next, we need to do the actual text part of our string here. So the subtitle text, which is another one that we already created earlier when I copied and pasted. And this is going to come from the split temp 1. Remember when I said that was being split into 2 pieces, and the second part is 1, which is our subtitle text only. So we're getting just this part after the pipe to be our subtitle text. So we just added that one, that string to our subtitle text list. Okay, so we have now completed splitting our subtitle elements into their respective lists. Now we need to split out our trigger elements. Now this one's a little more complicated, but we're going to use the same basic function or basic setup here. We're going to do another set it through the same incrementing count, and this time we are going to do a string array, and we'll just call this split temp 2, or well 1, and we're going to take trigger lines again, or sorry, trigger lines for the first time. The other one was subtitle lines. Remember, we split those out into their own ones, and count. And in the case for us, we only have one trigger line, but if you have more, it'll increment through all of them and split these off as well. And so we're going to do the same thing we did before by splitting the pipe. Splitting the pipe, okay. And the trigger timing strings dot add is going to be pretty much identical to what we did before, but we're using split temp 1 this time and 0 to get that first part again of our trigger. So since this string was not included in our subtitle list, we have to do it again, but for trigger ones. So we're doing the same thing again for triggers. We're taking out that first part for the timing. And we're going to do another clean, we're going to clean that again. So we're going to do trigger timings dot add float parse clean time string trigger timing strings count, and then 3 brackets. There we go. Okay. So now we're doing the same thing we did up here, but just for our trigger timing strings. And now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because we need to actually break up this trigger string again. We need to split it again, because we're going to get the cube and the grow as 2 separate things. So we're going to go and do triggers dot add, and we're going to add everything from split temp 1. So what that's doing is it's taking the second half, it's taking all of the stuff after the pipe and putting it also in its own triggers, which is similar to what we did up here, except now we're going to split that again. So we're going to go and we're going to do string array split temp 2. And that's going to be it's going to pull from triggers, the one we just added the second part of that string to, and we're going to do triggers count dot split. And this time, instead of splitting at the pipe, we are splitting at the dash. Okay, so the dash is between our words here. So we've got the dash there. And I have one on the end of it too, just because pulling from resources was giving me an error without having this at the end. So I don't know if you find a way around that, but just putting another one at the end seems to fix that. So when it splits, it gets rid of the splitting characters. So we've already gotten rid of those now by splitting this. So we have cube, and grow. Now we need to put those in their own lists. So we're going to take... Oh, and first we need to get rid of the trigger tag. So the split temp 2 that we just created for the first half of it, because that's the first half before the first dash that includes the tag. We're going to do a split temp 2 0. So we're replacing that entry so the tag we want to replace is trigger, and we're just going to replace it with nothing, so just 2 quotation marks. So that I'll replace it with no characters. It'll basically delete it, and that's what we want. We want to get rid of that tag because we don't want to display that anywhere or have that mess up anything. So now we're going to separate those 2 values that we got from splitting with the dash, now that we've removed the trigger tag. So we're going to do trigger object names, which is another list that we created earlier. And it's going to split temp 2, the first entry, which is 0. which is the game object name that we're going to be calling, and then trigger method names dot add split temp to 1. So that's that second piece there. Okay, that's a lot of text parsing, and I think we're just about there. So let's see here. I'm just checking my outline for this tutorial, make sure I don't skip anything. Okay, so we're going to set the initial subtitle text, and this will be important later, but the reason we want to do this is the method that we're going to use to check the timing, it doesn't test for the first entry properly, so we're just going to manually set the first entry to the correct subtitle text. So we'll say if, we'll check to make sure the subtitle text is not empty. The first entry is not null. And then display subtitle is going to equal subtitle text 0. Okay. So what we're doing here is just setting what we want to actually display to be the first entry in our subtitle text list, which would be the first subtitle of the dialogue that we're creating. And you'll see here that the subtitle text list was the one that we created up here when we split out this last piece, this piece of our original full string. So we're setting the one we want to display when we first call begin dialogue. It'll be that first entry. So that sets us up to start right at the beginning of our subtitles. All right, so we're actually at a point now where we can save that and we can test to make sure that this is working properly. So let's go ahead and play. And if I hit space, oh, let's see here. Okay, that didn't work. So let's check to make sure that we did this correctly. Oh, I know why that's not working, because we didn't actually, I don't know, let's find out. Okay, file lines temp.text.split. Okay, so the temp is not working. It's not pulling this in for some reason. Oh, you know what? I think I probably didn't name it correctly. Yep, the folder is called dialogues. So if we go back in here and just change that to dialogues, because I got the subfolder name incorrect, now we should be able to fix that. Okay, so hit play. Did we get? Yes, we did. Okay, so the argument is out of range. That's just because we haven't done any actual displaying of anything yet. But you can see here we did actually pull in all of our information. So let's check it to make sure. So we've got subtitle timings, and these numbers are floats now. This is a float list, and it got rid of all the extra values. Since it's a float, obviously for a 5-second one, the formatting I use in my text file is to keep all these consistent so all the pipes are at the same point and it's easier to follow when I'm doing editing by hand. And so for this trigger one, it should be 5 seconds, so we can see that yes, our trigger timings, we have 1 for 5 seconds. And then I guess for the rest of these the trigger ones, we've got cube and grow, which cube is the object, or it will be the object we're going to call, and grow is the function we'll call. And then for our subtitle timings, we've got all of these ones here, and then all of the strings after the pipe, including the breaks, and we'll be able to reference those here in a minute as well. So now we need to just tell it what to do with with these strings that we have separated into their own lists. So how we do that? We are going to create an onGUI function. So onGUI is a built-in function in Unity. And this allows us to display information pretty much every time the game has an update loop, but it's important for GUI information for Unity's built-in stuff. So to start off, we're going to make sure that we are using a proper dialog audio file. So we'll do an if dialog audio is not equal to null, and the audio, audio, why does it keep doing that? Audio clip dot name. We just want this to be audio. There we go. The audio clip name should be equal to dialog audio dot name. Okay, so to understand that a little bit, basically, we're trying to make sure that we just aren't using anything that would cause any errors because it's not on the right dialog file. Because we only want to have subtitle text that is matched with the audio file that we're using. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to check for the break tag or a negative next subtitle number. Because obviously we can't have our next subtitle be negative because we don't have any negative entries in our lists. So we will do an if, and we'll do if the next subtitle is greater than 0. We want to make sure it's greater than 0. And we do not want the subtitle text of the next subtitle -1 to contain the break tag. Okay, I think we got it. So what does that mean? So our next subtitle has to be greater than 0, obviously, because we set the first subtitle manually up here. So, but from then on, all of them have to be greater than 0. And then we do not want to display any subtitles if there's the break tag in here. And so by saying next subtitle -1, what we're actually saying is current subtitle. So if it's not going to do anything in here if the break tag is located in our current subtitle. So in here is where we're going to put our GUI information. So in here we're going to create our GUI. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a GUI style. And this is a built-in Unity thing, and I'm just going to copy and paste it real quick. And we'll put it right above our singleton property. So we'll do a private GUI style called subtitle style, and it'll just be a new GUI style. So if we go back down here, this is where we're going to put in the parameters for what our GUI style is going to look like. But first, we'll do GUI.depth because we want it to be in front of everything else in the scene. We're just going to put it to 1000 and negative 1001. So that'll put it the lower the number negative, the closer it is on top of, or more on top of everything else it is. So we'll put it at negative 1001 just to be safe because subtitles should be over everything. And then for our subtitle style, we're going to do a fixed width. And that's going to equal the screen width divided by 1.5. And a lot of these values I'm going to start using for this GUI are just ones that I've found work well. You can definitely mess around with these yourself and see what you like and just kind of experiment a little bit. And here we're going to turn on word wrapping because if our line is too long, we want it to continue down onto a second line. And then we want to have alignment in the center. So we need a text anchor, middle center. So we're fixing the width of the style, we're putting a word wrap on it, we're doing an alignment. We're also going to do a text color. So the normal text color is going to equal to white. And then the font style, or sorry, font size, we're going to have it be a product of the size of our screen. So we'll do a math f dot, floor. We're going to floor to int the screen height times, and this is just a value that I found works well. It's 0.0225. It sounds kind of random, but we'll see here what you think when we test it out. And so we've kind of established what we want it to look like, and now we have to say what it's actually going to draw on the screen. So we're going to do a vector2 called size, and it's going to be our subtitle style dot calculate the size, and it'll be a new GUI content. And then we want to do GUI.content color dot blue, black. Now what we're doing here is we're creating a slightly offset display of the text that will be black, and this will be drawn first. And then what we'll do is we'll create a white one that's just like 1 pixel offset from that. So it'll look like a 1 pixel offset drop shadow essentially, so that your white text will stand out on any background. So what we'll do is we'll create a GUI label, and it needs to be a new rect, and we're going to define the size of this rect. So it'll be screen width divided by 2, so half the screen width, and this will be the positioning. The size that we just identified, x dimension divided by 2, and then we'll do an add 1 to this because this will be our 1 pixel offset, and then we'll do screen dot height divided by, and again, some of these are just values that I find work well, minus size dot y. +1, the 1 pixel offset. And then we just need to know the size of the rest of the content to display for the width and height of it. So we've done the left and top offset, and now we're doing the width and height of the actual GUI label. So size.y. And then we need to do the text that we're going to display is display subtitle. And display subtitle is what we've set right here for the first one. And then we're going to change that here in another little test that we'll do in a second. And then now we'll do the second GUI label with the content color of white. So this will be the one on top since the black was just drawn first. And we'll do something very, very similar here. So we'll just copy and paste this, but we'll just remove that 1 pixel offset. So now the white will be on top with the 1 pixel offset. Okay. Now, so far we're only displaying the information for the first subtitle because we're not incrementing what the subtitle is. So now we need to start checking for the timing of our subtitles and when they should be incremented. So we're going to increment next subtitle when we hit the associated time point. So if next subtitle is less than the subtitle count, so obviously we can't go over the number of subtitles that we have in our list, then we're going to do this. Okay. So here's where we're going to start calculating how far through the dialogue audio file we are. And to do that, we're going to need something, we're going to use something called time samples. We're going to need a private constant float that is the exact, it's the exact rate that the audio file plays. So when you open your file in an audio editing application, you'll be able to identify the bit rate of your file. And so this just determines like basically how many bits per second or something like that. I don't know exactly how it works, but essentially you can divide the time samples of the audio file by the number of the bit rate, and that'll give you how many seconds through the file it is. And this is a more precise way than using some of the other built-in usually Unity functions to figure out where you are in an audio file. So we just we've set that as something called rate, and it's a constant. So we're going to test this against the currently playing audio file. So if audio.timesamples, and there you can see there was an option for time, but we're using time samples, and we're going to divide that by the rate. And if that's greater than subtitle timings, and then next subtitle, which is the next one that's coming up, then we're going to do this. We are going to set the display subtitle equal to the subtitle text for next subtitle. I feel like I'm saying subtitle 500,000 times in this tutorial. And then we're going to increment our next subtitle int. So we're checking here if the time that we are through the audio file is greater than the timing that we've identified for the next subtitle. So are we currently past the point that we're checking for that the next subtitle should be displayed. And if we are, change the display subtitle to the next subtitle text. And then we will increment the next subtitle so that we're now checking for the next one. So this display subtitle is what's being displayed here in these GUI labels. So now we're checking for that. And we got to do essentially the same thing for our triggers. So let me copy in some stuff here to save a little time again. So we've got the next trigger, make sure it's less than the trigger count, again, obviously. And then we're going to do a GameObject.find, because we're looking for the game object that we want to send the trigger to. And it's got to be trigger object names, next trigger, and then we're going to send a message to that game object that we just found, and the message is also coming from our trigger methods next trigger. And then we will increment our next trigger, same as we incremented our next subtitle. Okay. Trigger method names. I didn't put that in correctly. So trigger method names, trigger object names, and trigger method names. Those are two of the other lists that we split out from the dash. Remember, we split the dashes out and then removed the trigger tag so that we're finding the game object that we want and sending it the message that we want. And this is all being pulled from that text file. And I think that is everything. Now, if we run, save and test it here, will be the true test. Oh no, what have we done? Okay. Oh boy. Argument is out of range. Let's see if we can figure this out. Oh, you know what? That's why. Don't copy and paste, people. It's evil. Alright, let's try this again. Moment of truth. Oh, look at that.
Jessica, can you hear me?
And there we go.
Connors, Jesse, I can't get a reading on your location. Talk to me.
Now, we just got an error here.
Yeah, I'm here. I hear you, Connors.
And I bet I know why. Yes. Okay, so we have no trigger object in the scene. So I'm going to grab some stuff from the other project I showed at the beginning, just to make this quicker again. We're going to do a test trigger script, and this is going to have the grow function in it that we need. So just quickly here, it's just a simple script that'll make our cube object grow. So when it gets the send message for the name of the function called grow, it'll do all this stuff and make it grow, and we'll see it happen in the game view. So I guess I need to actually add a cube. So here's our game object called cube that it's going to search for, and then it's going to find the test trigger on this, and it's going to call the grow function. So let's try it out again.
Jessica, can you hear me? It's Connors, Jesse, I can't get a reading on your
And
location.
there we go.
Talk to me.
So you can see we just grew our little cube
Yeah,
with
I'm here. I hear
everything
you, Connors.
being called directly from the text file that we created. And we have tons of control now, so we can put in triggers all over the place, whatever we want, calling functions on whatever object we want directly in our code without having to code something unique into our original dialog manager script or any other script for that matter. And we can time it perfectly with the dialogue, which is very important, obviously. Like if a character in your game is saying something's about to happen and you want to time it exactly with what he's saying, then you can do that very easily with these trigger timings. So yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. I may package this up and put it up there for people if they want to check their work against it or take a better look at the code. But yeah, everything that we have just done is pretty simple and pretty extensible to lots of other things. One of the ways that you could use this is if you want to have your game support multiple languages, you can create text key tags that link to text files that are a different text file for every language that you want to support. And then you can search for a key and have that key pull in the translated versions of each string of text that you want. And so that's just one example of another way that you could use this. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments or anything, just leave them in the comments here on YouTube or on our blog. randomseedgames.com is our website, and our game is Lacuna Passage. And actually, you know what? I can show you the actual full implementation of this in one of our projects. And let's just go to don't save. So this is how we're using the subtitle feature in our game. And all of these things you'll see here are being triggered from those dialog files. So you'll see it's all black right now. And then Jessica wakes up and stands up. And now I can look around.
I hear you, Connors.
Jessica, listen to me. I can't get a lock on your location.
And it works great. And you can even add a toggle in your game to turn off the subtitles if you want. That's pretty simple to do in that update loop as well. And there you saw we had a beeping noise that was timed with our audio.
I've got maybe 10 minutes left.
10 minutes? It's practically an eternity. Just relax. We're going to get you home.
So yeah, that is our subtitle system, and I'm sure you guys can find other ways to use it, and I'd love to see what you can do. And as a bit of a caveat to all this, I am not an experienced programmer, so there may be things that I've done wrong or not very well optimized, or maybe I'm just a horribly slow typer. But I appreciate you sitting through the tutorial, and maybe I can learn something from you guys too. Thank you very much for watching.